Hi, I'm Sofia Hurtado. This is Akshina, Gupta, Grace Chang, Michael Chan. We are the Linguists, and this is our final report. For this project, we're going to go through how we pre-processed, formed questions, and then generated our answers. As an input, we're given an article from Wikipedia. We then feed this into a splitting sentences. And instead of splitting on just periods itself, we also made sure to include if a period was inside of a parentheses to indicate something like circa, we would not just split on that. We then decided to simplify a sentence. So in this case, we noticed that there's a lot of clauses or phrases in between two commas, such as these. But then we also noticed that if a word was a root, then we decided to keep that root inside of the clause. So in this case, worshipped was a root, and we did this to maintain the significance of the sentence. The next thing that we tried was splitting on the conjunction. So in here you'll notice that there's two parts of the sentences separated by this conjunction and. We also made sure to take note of the subject, and then this was able to produce two different sentences here. Next, we're going to move on into the question forming.
So the first thing for question forming we considered was, given a sentence, we identified all of the named entities in that sentence, and based on the different types of named entities, we would form the appropriate type of questions. For example, a person would lead to a who question. And so these are some examples of the questions we would form based on named entities. What we did was take the span of the previous named entity and take all of the sentence up to the end of the next named entity, and that seemed to give us good results. The next type of question we considered were binary questions. So we looked for sentences with the existential verbs such as is and was, and we simply put them in the front of the sentence. We also tried forming some different types of questions with more specific rules. For example, we would look with sentences that had the words also known as, and we would once again identify the named entity recognition, and we would come up with an also known as type of question. We also tried implementing papers with specific rules, such as one that looked for relative clauses and in sentences with words such as who and whom, which would give us high quality questions. Next, we also ranked questions at the end, and so the first thing we did was classify questions into different groups based on their type and also their length. We would then choose a roughly uniform distribution from each category, and we would prefer questions with medium length that are of type WH. Next, we're going to look at answer generation.
For answer generation, we roughly followed this workflow. We first used word embeddings and cosine similarity to identify the most relevant sentences, and then we split the question based on question type into two different types of search. For finding the most relevant sentence, we used word embeddings in order to identify words in potential sentences that are similar to the question. We then used cosine similarity to assign similarity scores to these sentences and picked the most similar sentence as the sentence we will be operating on. Then we looked at the sentence and we identified the question type of that sentence. So we searched for WH questions by looking for keywords such as whose, when, or where, and we identify that sentence as a WH question. The second priority would be we would look for binary indicators such as does or are, and we would identify the question as a binary question. For WH question, we used a priority NER search. So we would look for entities in an order of priority. So for example, for when questions, we would prefer dates over less relevant named entities such as cardinals or ordinals. This is an example sentence where we see priority NER search being used. This is a where question, so we identified the following where types of named entities. And we used the priority search in order to put them into a relative ordering. We then removed any NERs that were present in the question, as these were unlikely to be the answers. Then based upon this, we were able to identify the highest priority answer as the correct one. Then for binary questions, we looked for negative words in the sentence in order to identify if the answer was no or a yes. So if a negative word was found in the question, we answered no, and if a negative word was not found in the question, we answered yes. Lastly, for what, which, and how questions, we use dependency parsing. In this way, we split a sentence based upon its root word, which in this case is supplement, and I looked at both halves of the sentence to identify which half had less words in similar with the question. So for example, the first half of this sentence has autumn and robins in common with the question, while the second half only has diet in common with the question. We then identified the half that had less common words, and we returned the answer as everything in that half aside from words that were in the question. These are our references for papers that we used to identify high-quality types of questions.
And one of the biggest lessons that we learned from this course is that linguists be crazy. Thank you.